Hi guys and welcome back to another SA Top 10. Today we will be looking at the top 10 serial killers in SA's history. At number 10 we have David Rantuceni, born in 1964. Rantuceni was a serial killer and a rapist who operated around Mangale town in Limpopo province. In 2009 he was charged with 10 murders, 17 rape cases, 18 kidnappings and 1 indecent assault. He was sentenced to 220 years in prison, which was equivalent to 16 life sentences. All his victims were children, except for one woman. During his sentencing, the judge stated that he would not be considered for parole until he had completed at least 35 years in prison. Considering the time that the ruling was made, he would have been considered for parole at the age of 80. He did not live to see the day as he was found hanging in his cell shortly after admission to the prison. At number 9 we have Christopher Mhlengwa Sikori. Sikori began committing murders and getting overly violent at the early age of 19. In July 1995 he got arrested for attempted murder. After being granted bail, he started attacking families as well as women traveling by themselves in Donnybrook, KwaZulu-Natal. Christopher would invade homes and shoot all men present. He would then take all the females to a plantation or field where he would rape them together for more than 5 hours. The females that refused to cooperate would be shot dead. Then he would commit necrophilia. His arrest occurred in September 1995, which was followed by a conviction of 21 charges, including 5 sexual assaults, 8 murders, 5 attempted murders, and 1 offensive assault. All these crimes happened between a span of 6 months. On January 7, 1997, he was sentenced to 140 years imprisonment. And in number 8, we have Thabo Twala. Twala began raping and killing women in KwaZulu-Natal. His victims were women seeking employment in the sugarcane fields. He would promise them jobs as domestic servants in hotels and then led them into fields where he would rape, strangle, and beat them up until their last breath. To destroy evidence, he would light up the area. He was arrested in August 1997, shortly after his DNA matched that one that taken from one of the victims. Prior to his sentencing, some claimed to have seen him near his home, and the rumor spread through the village. Vengeful villagers locked his family inside their house and set it on fire. They got lucky as a neighbor came to their rescue. They later rushed to the police station for safety. On March 31, 1999, he was declared guilty of 10 rapes and 16 murders. He was sentenced to 506 years in prison. At number 7, we have Norman Afzaal. Norman, also known as the station strangler, was a 5th grade teacher who was loved and appreciated by his community. He can speak 7 languages, including English, French, Xhosa, and Afrikaans. He also possesses great skills in playing a couple of musical instruments. With his job, he knew the best way to influence and manipulate young boys. In 1986, young boys began disappearing from train stations and later would be found tied up, sodomized, and strangled with their underwear in shallow sandy graves. In 1994, a total of 11 bodies were found. Simon was identified when one boy realized that his friend was found dead after helping the teacher carry boxes. Following his apprehension, he claimed that his older stepbrother had sodomized him in a younger years and that he heard voices instructing him to murder his victims. Following his confession, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. At number 6, we have Fascination. The Zulu people of South Africa believed in the existence of Tokula. This is a tiny evil spirit, hairy, half animal, half human. If one were to meet him and look him in the eyes, she would die at that moment. Additionally, no man can refuse to grant him his wishes. If one commits robbery, rape, or murder and can convince the community that it is the Tokula that made him do it, the offense may be overlooked. Alfasi was a weak Sangoma, medicine man. While seeking the guidance of another Sangoma, he claimed to have been possessed by a Tokula. In this state of possession, he went on an 18-month killing spree. His first crime was raping and killing a young girl in the presence of his mistress. As he called the police, he managed to escape. After mutilating and murdering 5 children, he was caught but still managed to escape. Since body parts are necessary for most coma treatments, it was suspected that he would sell them to obtain financial gains. After escaping, he managed to stay in the loose for 1 month before being captured. In his trial, he claimed to be innocent as it was the Tokula Twins. However, two psychologists refused to believe him as they claimed that he got sexual gratification from inflicting pain. Eventually, he was convicted of 15 murders and sentenced to death through hanging. Several local Zulu chiefs requested to be present during the hanging to ensure that the evil spirit had departed. Number 5, we have Moses Tlali. While in his 20s, Tlali began sexually abusing women. After being arrested and sent to jail, other inmates began sexually abusing him as well. He was released in 1994, and this is when his reign of terror began. He told his victims that he was a businessman who would assist them in seeking employment. He would then take them to a secure place where he would rape and strangle them. There are times when he would ring the victim's family. In less than 1 year, he had already committed 30 murders. Tlali committed these wicked deeds in one area, so the bodies of the dead women were only meters from each other. One of the woman's 2-year-old son's body was found lying a few meters from hers. He died from thirst and hunger. On the 4th of December 1997, he was sentenced to a total of 2,410 years imprisonment. The ruling resulted from a judgment made starting. He would serve 5 years in prison for each of the 6 robberies, 12 years for each of the 40 rapes, and 50 years for each of the 38 women he murdered. On admission to prison, Tlali was discovered to have contracted HIV. And in number 4, we have Jack Mangale, better known as the West End serial killer. Mangale managed to lure his victims by claiming that he was a Zion Christian prophet and a preacher. Through his false titles, he was able to entice women and take them to the West End brick and clay factory. This was close to his home in West Noria, south of Johannesburg. Upon arrival, he would rape and kill them. Luckily, 2 women were able to survive the terrifying encounter with the murderer. One of them testified that he offered her a ride and was prophesying over her on their journey. He then drove to an isolated place where he ruthlessly attacked her. Victims were linked to him from this location and his tactics of murder, which were either beating them to death or strangling them. Jack Mangale was convicted of his 52 charges on February 17, 2011. Following the ruling of the 16 life sentences in imprisonment without the possibility of parole. At number 3, we have Jimmy Maketa, also known as the Jesus Killer. Maketa is described as an unremorseful psychopath. During his younger years, he frequently got into fights with others, set things on fire, escaped home, and even got involved in bestiality. When living in the streets, he got a tattoo of the name Jesus on the upper lip. This was the characteristics that surviving victims would remember when asked to describe the attacker. Before attacking his victims in Philippi, Cape Town, he would first stalk them, mostly sitting on a hill so that he could get a clear view of the farm laborers, local houses and farm. When darkness would kick in, he would attack his targets, raping and killing them using an axe or a hammer. Their bodies were thrown in dams. Akita was captured after his phone was collected at a crime scene. He wrote letters to his family where he would confess to the murders, rapes in detail. He was found guilty of 47 charges, including 9 counts of rape and 16 murders. 5 of his victims were between 60 and 70. Jimmy will be eligible for parole in 2031. At number 2, we have Elias the. In the 1950s, Elias killed at least 16 men and women in Atteridgeville, South Africa. His victims were only white people, and this caused much distress during the peak years of apartheid. Before his capture, he had received the nickname Pangaman, which is a local word for a long board blade knife or machete. This was the item he used to murder his victims. Following his capture and conviction, he was hanged to death on November the 14th, 1960. And in number 1, we have Cedric Marker, born in 1965. Mahopa Cedric Marker stood out from most other killers as he had no weapons or victims' preferences. People of any race, age, and sex were suitable for him as long as he could rape, mutilate, and kill them. He is probably known as the Wemba painkiller as it was this part of Johannesburg in which he attacked most of his victims between 1996 and 1997. Cedric began his cruel act by robbing taxi drivers and shop owners, whereafter he would ruthlessly beat them to death. He then started attacking couples where he would murder the men as the woman watched. He would then rape the woman and kill them after he was done. Initially, the police thought that two separate people were making the killings. After thorough investigation, they realized that it was one killer all through. During his trial, he pleaded not guilty. Luckily, surviving female victims emerged and testified against him. Eventually, he was convicted of 14 rapes, 26 attempted murders, 27 murders, 41 robberies, and the unlawful possession of ammunition and firearms. He was declared guilty of 114 of the 134 charges and sentenced for a total of 1,340 years behind bars. Yeah, these guys are all psychopaths, so something must be wrong with them to just kill people like that. Seems like, yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please subscribe and please come again.